How concerned are we about Seth Lugo? I'll give you my thoughts next on Locked On Royals.
You are Locked On Royals, your daily Kansas City Royals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are tuned into another edition of Locked On Royals in the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find me on Twitter at JohnnyJ_15. That is at JOHNYJ_15. And you can also check us out on wherever you listen to podcasts. That can be Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcast, Odyssey, and YouTube. Just be sure to hit the follow button and subscribe. For the first-time listeners wondering how this channel works, I will be bringing you episodes Monday through Friday, 30-minute episodes in length. And we also have the Locked On Royals postcast, which is hosted by Chance Lebo, and he goes to you live for about 15 to 20 minutes at the conclusion of every single game. Before we get started, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. I've gone back and forth with Sunday's game and today's game and tried to maybe make up my mind as to which game was more frustrating. Which game made you want to rip your hair out more? Because both of these games were ones the Royals should have not only won, but run away with. We talked all about Sunday's game on Monday and how a Twins bullpen that was completely gutted was able to use a collection of arms and hold you to 3 runs. You had 1 hit with runners in scoring position. You were 1 for 15 or 1 for 16. And Carlos Estevez gave up a walk-off 2-run home run, and you lost a series to a team that, talent-wise, you're better than. It's not quite the same as this Washington series, but you're at this point in the season where 2 of 3 against teams like Washington aren't going to cut it. That's just simply not good enough. And there's going to be very few times on this podcast I'm going to say series wins are not good enough. But when you've put yourself in this position, 500 team, you're 4 games back of a playoff spot, and you've got a 10-game stretch like this, a sub-50 win Washington team with the worst bullpen in baseball, the White Sox coming into town this weekend, and a struggling Rangers team. 2-1's not the end of the world. But when we talked about this game last night, Seth Lugo on the mound, a guy who the Royals should be able to tee off on in Jake Irvin throwing for Washington. This should have been a cakewalk. And that's why you play the games. That's why baseball is so unpredictable. Because you are a team that isn't head and shoulders better than Washington, but you're much better than them. And today, the fact that Seth Lugo puts you in a 5-0 hole, that's infuriating. The fact that he gave up 7 runs again for the second straight start, that's infuriating. And then you come all the way back to tie this game, and you cough it up in the 9th, and you only get 1 run in 5 innings against that bullpen when they tried multiple times to gift you a run or 2. It's infuriating, and that's why I'm not sure I should make my choice now or my decision now on which game was more frustrating, because Sunday, I was very irritated for the rest of the night. Tonight, I'm still going to be able to acknowledge the series win, but I don't feel good about this series. I thought the Royals, for the most part, did not play very well in this series. And it's not to be a prisoner of the moment. It's not just to react to this one game, but the pitching staff was not very good on Monday's game. They were not very good on Tuesday's game, and they certainly were not good today. And I go back to something I said last night, which was, man, you average 6 or 7 runs over these next 4 games, you're going to win all of them. Well, how about that? You lose the first game. You score 7 runs, and you lose to Washington with that bullpen. I will commend the effort that the offense put together. They still only got 1 run over 5 innings against the worst bullpen in baseball. And there were multiple opportunities they could have busted that game open. Again, it's baseball. It happens. Those are still guys getting paid money to win baseball games. This first segment is about Seth Lugo. And it is not ideal whatsoever that in the few starts since signing the extension, he has been putrid, to put it bluntly. He has been putrid. He was not very sharp against Atlanta. Now, he did go 5 2/3 of scoreless ball, but then gave up 3 when it was all said and done, and it almost spiraled in that 6th inning. Then he doesn't work very deep in his start against Toronto. He gets shelled by a bad lineup in Minnesota, and he gets shelled by another bad lineup in Washington. And to put your offense in a 5-0 hole when they're trying to pull off a sweep, it's not just something you see from Seth Lugo very often. And I have to wonder, what's the deal? What's the issue? Is he hurt? Does he have dead arm? I mean, is he just fatigued at this point in the season? I mean, these were all things the Royals had to have thought about when giving him the extension. He's nearing his mid-30s. He's not some guy that has thrown 200 innings every single year of his career. He's hovered around either just under 100 innings when he was a full-time reliever, or probably a little bit less than that. But as a starter, threw about 140 innings for San Diego, threw 206 last year for the Royals, and he'll probably be in that ballpark of 180-ish this year. That would be my guess. But it's about how efficient those innings are going to be. I mean, is this the beginning of a fall-off for Seth Lugo, or are we overreacting to 4 really bad starts? Now, we brought up the numbers last night, too. Over his last 7, he had not been very good. He had an ERA over 5. And now those numbers have only been inflated. That number might be over 6 now. And we talk about this Royals team and what needs to happen, how they're going to get to the postseason. I said last night, you got to put it a little bit more on the offense. You got to lean on that group because the rotation might run into some fatigue. They might have some injuries or guys that just can't stay healthy. I mean, you rely on the offense for these next couple of games, these next couple of series. You're not asking the world from your starter. You just ask him to give you 5 innings, a 2-run ball, and go out there and score 6 or 7 runs and hand it over to your bullpen. And technically, the Royals were able to do that in Game 1 and Game 2. Now, maybe I was being too harsh in saying I didn't think the Royals played all that well in this series, but that was a Washington team that just imploded multiple times in Game 1 and Game 2. Like, the Royals didn't dominate this series, even though they took 2 of 3. But they did not pitch well against Washington. And Seth Lugo is going to be asked to throw again this coming series against Texas, or the next coming series. And by the way, the Rangers had a crushing loss today, so this would have catapulted the Royals over them in the wild card standings, unless I missed something and the Rangers found a way to come back in the 9th inning. But they did not. They lost 6-4. So that loss becomes all that more infuriating. And it sucks because this is not one of those games where you had a 7-0 lead, or what did it end up being? 5-0 and then 7-3, and then you blew it. Or it wasn't like the Rangers loss where they had a 2-run lead, 2 outs and nobody on, and then the Diamondbacks ended up scoring 4. Like, that's absolutely infuriating. But they're also playing the Diamondbacks, and the Royals are playing the Nationals. And for this homestand, they needed to play really, really good baseball to put themselves into a good spot. That is still possible. Don't get it twisted. You know, they've got a White Sox team they can go in there and beat up on. But they also had a great opportunity today to go in there and sweep Washington. And Seth Lugo ripped that opportunity from them with a very poor start and another very poor start. If I had to rate my concern level 1 to 10, I'm probably at a 7 right now, just because of his age. And it wouldn't surprise me if they give him maybe a little extra rest in between his next start. I know Bailey Falter's moving to the bullpen and Lorenzen's going to start on Saturday, but I don't know. I don't want to go as far to say it's an injury because you just don't want to speculate on stuff like that, but it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if it's fatigue setting in. And that can't happen for a guy you just gave a contract extension to, a guy that you're going to be counting on next year. He can't just be this guy that pitches really well in the first half and then tanks in the second half. And this has been far more of a regression this year than it was last year. The good news for the Royals last year is that they had more of a cushion, where this team is trying to make up ground rapidly. They are trying to hustle every single series and rattle off winning streak after winning streak. And now you've put more pressure on that White Sox series. You've put more pressure on Noah Cameron, Lorenzen, and Ryan Berger to go out there and pitch very well. And I thought in that Minnesota series, facing Joe Ryan on a Friday night with Lugo on the mound, you're not expecting to win that game, but Lugo didn't even give him a chance to win that game. And today, they still had a chance to win that game, but he put them in a very difficult spot. If he had his C-minus game today, he gave up 3 or 4 runs in 4 innings. The Royals win this game comfortably. They might not even use Carlos Estevez in the 9th inning because the Nationals didn't get a good start from Jake Irvin. And you had that bullpen waiting, and the Royals only got 1 run in 5 innings off the worst bullpen ERA-wise in all of baseball. Very, very frustrating loss for the Royals. I know a lot of people are sounding off about it, and I don't blame you. So do you believe Sunday's game was more infuriating, or do you believe today's game was more infuriating as a Royals fan? Let us know in the YouTube comments below. For our next segment, let's talk about Carlos Estevez. He has not been very sharp since the All-Star break, even though his stuff is starting to play up a little more. I'll give you my thoughts on him next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson, and you can find us on wherever you listen to your podcasts. Want to tell you about OpenPhone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had a service emergency, like a burst pipe, and if the first plumber didn't answer, did you wait? Nope, you just called the next one. That's why having a reliable business line is so important, and that's why you need OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system that helps you streamline and scale customer communication, all from an app on your phone or computer. OpenPhone is offering Locked On Royals listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnMLB. That's OpenPhone.com/LockedOnMLB. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. The Seth Lugo debacle in today's game was overshadowed a little bit at the very tail end because the Royals had done a great job storming all the way back and tying this game up. And then in the 9th inning, I'm thinking to myself, man, if Carlos Estevez can just be on his A game for this inning, this top half of the 9th, I felt good the Royals were going to walk it off in the bottom of the 9th. I just felt good with how things were progressing against the Nationals bullpen, and one of those guys was bound to leave a hanging pitch over the middle, and someone was going to knock it over the wall for a walk-off home run. And I remember so vividly last year. It was a huge win for the Royals. I can't remember. I more so remember the podcast. I don't remember the game. But we brought up a very famous quote from Denny Matthews that he said during the 2014 season. And I always love to bring it up from time to time. But it was against Minnesota late in the season, and the Royals were starting to go on a run. And Alex Gordon's at the plate. Glenn Perkins is on the mound for Minnesota. And he said, if this is your year, these are the games you win, or if this is your year and everything is pointing to this being the Royals' year, these are the games you win. If it is not, then these are the games you lose. And crack of the bat, Gordon homers, and we know the rest of the 2014 Royals. And last year they had a game like that where, maybe it was Seattle when they were down 7-0, clawed all the way back and walked it off with that Nelson Velasquez ground ball in the 9th inning. But for this team, how many times has a big moment come up? Like the Royals have been storming back, or they're trying to hang on in the 9th, and they just don't win that game. And unfortunately, the tough reality of it is that maybe this team just isn't going to be able to get it done. We can sit here and talk about winning streaks and they need to do this and that. There's just a real world scenario in which they don't. There's a real world scenario in which they maybe finish a few games over 500. And when you look back 5 years from now, it's not a terrible year because you've experienced a lot of them as a Royals fan. But this year, you just had higher expectations. And that's what makes this year so frustrating, because you went into it expecting to compete for a division title, expecting to compete for the postseason. And this team almost seems to keep you just in it enough, just enough to be invested where your heart can break for losses like this. And that's why I believe Carlos Estevez is this perfect, poster child almost for the 2025 Royals. They are not a bad baseball team. Like when I talk about bad baseball teams, I look at Washington. That's a bad baseball team. Chicago's a bad baseball team. The White Sox, that is. The Colorado Rockies are a bad baseball team. Pittsburgh, bad baseball team. Like, if you were to ask a Phillies fan, I don't know, a Rays fan, do you think the Royals are a bad baseball team, and you didn't give them any context, they would look at their 60-61 record and go, they're average. And that's pretty much how I have viewed Carlos Estevez since the All-Star break. There's a lot of people that say, well, you got to get him out of the closer's role, right? He's just not trustworthy. And I understand that he has a lot of high-stress outings. He doesn't go out there like Wade Davis and Greg Holland and Kelvin Herrera used to and just burn through the middle of an order. No, he's got high-powered stuff, but he's going to walk somebody, or he's going to give up a double, or he's going to give up a single. And sometimes a 3-run lead turns into a 1-run lead, but he gets it done. Still, overall, like, if, again, you were just to look at the numbers, you were to go up to another fan in baseball and say, would you want to have Carlos Estevez as your closer, and you saw him leading the American League with 30 saves? It'd be one thing, too, if the Royals were the Brewers, where they have 74 wins and he's got 30 saves. I mean, the Royals have 60 wins. He's saved half of them. And his ERA is still under 3. I understand there's other parts to it. You got the whip, you've got the Ks per 9, you got the walks per 9, you've got some of those advanced numbers, the advanced metrics. He is not a dominant closer. But we've also seen Lucas Erceg take a little bit of a step back, and you're not going to remove a guy who has 30 saves this year from the closer's role. You know, if this team was fighting for first place and Lucas Erceg was coming on as the by far and away elite level reliever that he was last year, maybe you do. But I will say that for today's game, him giving up the run in the 9th, though very frustrating, was kind of like the 3rd or 4th bullet point to talk about today. Now, I say that, and he's the 2nd bullet point that we're talking about. More so when I think about this game. Like, same thing for Sunday. He gave up the 2-run home run to Luke Keyshaw, but the Royals scored 3 runs off of a poor bullpen. The Nationals today got 4 innings and 6 earned from Irvin, and they had to hold on to a 1-run lead over the final 5 innings. Everybody should have been putting money at that time down on the Royals to win that game. It just felt like they were going to bust it open in one of those innings, and they never did. They tied the game, and it was thanks to Tyler Tolbert creating a run, stealing 2nd and stealing 3rd. But, man, there was a moment earlier on where Kyle Isbell walks on 4 pitches. Nick Lofton's hit by a pitch. It sets up the middle of the order. And Bobby Witt Jr. has a pop-out, I believe it was, but it moved the runners up to 2nd and 3rd. And then Vinny popped out. And then Michael Garcia flew out. That was an immediate moment I circled and said, that's going to be one we go back on. And for Estevez, yeah, I don't understand how in some of these games, man, he strikes out C.J. Abrams, and he's facing Luis Garcia. He gets 2 ugly swings and then just a fastball up and away, and he ropes it into the gap in left center field. There's a double. Then he gets a pop out. Then he walks Nate Lowe. And then against the rookie and Lyle, he falls behind him. And that feels like what's happened a lot of times this year for him. And that's maybe, to me, when I watch Carlos Estevez pitch, he's just not as aggressive in the zone at times when you really want him to be. Like, yeah, facing Nate Lowe at the grand slam, you don't want to groove him a fastball because he can make that a 2-run lead. But to just work around him like that, you can't treat him like Aaron Judge. And for Lyle, that's a rookie right there. And you fall behind 2-0, and then it was 2-1, and you just knew that he was going to go up there and drive in a run. And that's been the upsetting part about Estevez in the second half, because the numbers overall don't look that bad. But because this team has such a small margin for error, those moments get amplified and they get put under a microscope. And we forget that they rallied down 5-0. But then you highlight the other stuff, runners in scoring position. I mean, this bullpen, after Lugo was not good whatsoever, they were able to keep things locked down until Estevez went out there, and it's just one too many mistakes. I don't believe, though, that he's a terrible closer and they need to remove him from that spot. If the Royals don't make the postseason, which the odds are telling you they won't, it's not going to be because Carlos Estevez gave up a couple of runs in the 9th or blew a couple of saves. It factors in, but it's not the reason. We're going to talk about the offense in the first 3 months of the year. we're going to talk about the regression and the lack of health from the starting rotation. There are just bigger fish to fry than that. And honestly, going into this weekend, you're not shaking up the bullpen there. You're asking more out of your starters. You're asking for this offense to build you a lead and not ask them to come back in a couple of these games. You shouldn't be doing that against teams like Washington and teams like Chicago. But for Carlos Estevez, he has been an upgrade over what they had last year. I get it. It's frustrating. It hasn't been great in the second half, but he's been worth the money this year. If the Royals were much, much better than they are, maybe it's not even that big of a talking point, or maybe it would be. I will say, and it's one of those things I like to refer back to many times. I did last year. I'm going to do it again. HDH skewed so much of our mind, our thought of what a great bullpen can look like, because they were otherworldly. They were so locked down and perhaps the best 1-2-3 baseball had ever seen. So when a closer comes in and they don't put away everybody and the way Holland did and the way Davis did, you think they're just not as good. Carlos Estevez is not an elite closer. He's a good closer. And he's been able to notch the number of saves this year. He hasn't imploded in some of these outings, but he has not been dominant and lights out. And I believe that's a perfect comparison to the 2025 Royals. They're not elite. They're not the best of the bunch. They're also not terrible. They're just fine. They're good. They're average. And that's exactly what the record shows. They're 60-61. And yes, if the Royals do go on a run, it's going to take Carlos Estevez becoming lights out the rest of the year, becoming that guy that is trusted in tie games and in one-run games in tough environments. That's one that stings today. Because after he got the strikeout, I thought, man, get ahead of the next guy. He did. He was ahead 0-2. Get out of here 1-2-3, go walk it off in the ninth inning. Not what happened today, and that's just baseball 101. Okay, we're going to take our final break of the show. When we come back, because of the loss today, it has made it a must-sweep scenario against the White Sox this weekend. I'll give you my thoughts on it next on Locked On Royals. You are tuned into Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jack Johnson. You can catch us on wherever you listen to your podcast. Want to tell you about Gametime, who was our title sponsor today. And with Gametime, we've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping. That's where Gametime comes in. Gametime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off on your first purchase. Those terms apply. So again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, LOCKEDONMLB, for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. The tough part about games like today is that you have an off day tomorrow. And for the players, it's great. You get to kick back, you get to relax, spend time with your family, spend time with your kids. But if you're just a consumer of of watching these games, you're just a fan of this team, it sucks because you got to sit on this loss for an extra day. And the Royals won't play again until late Friday night against the Chicago White Sox, which now has become a must-sweep series in my eyes. Maybe you view it differently. Maybe you think 2 of 3 can be just fine. But at some point, they're going to need to get comfortably over 500. And if you go 2 out of 3, you're 500 going in to play the Rangers. And then you're asking to take 3 of 4 from Texas. This was a great opportunity today to sweep Washington and set yourself up before facing Texas to build a healthy cushion. 64-60 sounded phenomenal. I would even take 63-61. That can only happen if they sweep the White Sox. Now, it's funny in baseball, and I've brought it up before, that bad losses, man, they sting. They sting a lot. And then you kind of forget about them the next day. And that happens in all sports, right? You forget about a bad loss a day or two later. Your favorite team plays on Sunday, plays on Saturday. You're really mad in the moment. It may take you 20 minutes, may take you the rest of the evening, the rest of the day. Maybe it takes you a full day or two to recover from it. Baseball's so tough, though, because you play every single day. Unless there's an off day, and now you got to sit on that game for 2 days. And I do still have confidence this Royals team can go out there and play really good baseball against the White Sox and sweep them and go into that Texas series 63-61. Would it have been fantastic to be 64-60? Absolutely. Going into that Rangers series, winners of 6 in a row. But also, if they go 5-1, you'll still be feeling great on Sunday evening going into that Texas series. It's still a lot to ask to go and sweep a team that's played 500 balls since the All-Star break. I mean, they're not a perfect team. They're a more inspired team than they saw back in April. But it's a team like Washington you should have beaten up on. And you're going to have Noah Cameron going on Friday night. You're going to have Michael Lorenzen going on Saturday. And you're going to have Ryan Bergert going on Sunday. I have not figured out yet who the starters are for Chicago. I want to say they're going to be seeing Burke. They're going to be seeing Savale. And then I think maybe Davis in one of those games as well. We'll dive into that, though, in tomorrow's episode because Friday will be a Mailbag Friday. But that's just what I feel is needed at this point. There is not a lot of time left. I know that 40 games can seem like a lot, or 41 games. But, man, one of these series has to be a sweep. And we talked about that 2 episodes ago, I believe it was. Whether it be Washington or Chicago, one of them has to be a sweep. You had it right for the pickings today. You could have gone out there, swept Washington, just relaxed. You're over 500 for the first time since June. And then welcome the White Sox, a big crowd, Noah Cameron on the ball. Just not what's going to happen. Because it didn't happen. Because they didn't play well today. At least the pitching staff did not play well today. Against the White Sox, though, you will see them twice before August comes to a close. You're also going to see Detroit twice before this month comes to a close. You got to find a way to spark some kind of run. And the offense has shown they're capable of doing it. Against the White Sox, though, I can't live with 2 out of 3. As much as I would love to say taking 2 out of 3 and going 4-2 to open up this homestand is just fine. And yes, they could go in there and play unbelievable baseball against the Rangers. That's asking a lot. I feel it's much easier to ask for a sweep against the White Sox than 2 out of 3 against the White Sox and 3 out of 4 against Texas. Because if you sweep the White Sox and then you split with Texas, that's a 7-3 homestand. And I said, if you go 7-3, you're still in this thing. 8-2, that feels a lot better because that would put you comfortably over 500 heading to Detroit to take on the Tigers, who were a different-looking Tigers team than the last time you saw them. I just feel that I have to put a little extra pressure on this series because of what happened today. If they swept Washington today, I'm fine with 2 out of 3 against the White Sox, which is ironic, a little bit funny when you think about it, because why is it okay to sweep the Nationals and then take 2 out of 3 from Chicago? But then if you only take 2 out of 3 against Washington, that I would feel a little bit differently if you swept Chicago. Right? I guess that would be the same record. I'm more so getting at how we feel right now. Like, man, you took 2 out of 3 against Washington, but you swept Chicago. I guess that means you have a little bit more momentum going into that Rangers series. I don't know, though. Today is one of the more frustrating outcomes of a Royals game. And we're all going to forget about it, be over it here shortly. Maybe not. Maybe some of you are really going to carry this anger until Friday night. And I wouldn't blame you because the only thing that makes you feel better about games like today is a win. Is a win on Friday night. The Royals get back to 500, and then Lorenzen wins it for him on Saturday, and Bergert can cap off the sweep. I believe that's what has to happen. It's not the season will be over if they take 2 of 3. They're just losing time on gaining ground for some of these teams. You want to make sure by the end of the week next week, so on Friday, or I guess, it would be Friday, going into that Detroit series, that you have put Texas behind you, that you have put the Rangers behind you in the wild card standings, and all you were looking at is Cleveland, Boston, New York, Seattle, Houston, all of those teams. and you just want to find a way to leapfrog Texas. And they go to Toronto this weekend, and they lost their series to Arizona. But this was a great opportunity today to leapfrog Texas and only build on that lead against the White Sox. Now, you've put yourself in more of a tough spot. I feel that you have to go in there and sweep the White Sox. Let me know what you think in the YouTube comments below. Do they got to win all three? Are you okay with 2 of 3? I know we all can agree on they absolutely cannot lose this series to the White Sox. That'll do it for another edition of Locked On Royals and the Locked On Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jack Johnson. Thank you for making Locked On Royals your first listen today. For your second, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale and find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Tomorrow, we will preview the upcoming series against the White Sox and take a look at this pitching staff as a whole and what they can do moving forward. But until tomorrow, you take it easy, Kansas City.